Hey folks, Lauren Shippen here with another audio drama recommendation. I am so excited to tell you about Redacted, a brand new Monster of the Week horror comedy podcast. Following the death of his twin, failing actor Jacob Kane assumes his late brother's life in hopes of a fresh start. Instead of finding stability, Jacob finds himself working within the Redacted unit, a covert agency tasked with containing impossible creatures and phenomena. As he becomes entangled with paranormal forces and secret agendas, Jacob struggles to keep his deception intact. This show was equal parts horror and surreal comedy, featuring incredible guest writers such as Jeffrey Reddick of Final Destination, Trevor Henderson, and many more. If you're a fan of classic Monster of the Week shows like The X-Files or procedural comedies like Psych, you are going to love this show. Redacted is out now on all platforms. Visit theredactedunit.com to listen and learn more. Hello, Havoc wreakers, and welcome back to our little dose of hope. If you're just joining us, I'm Lauren Shippen, creator of 2000 and Late. In an effort to balance out all the rough stuff the audio drama tackles, I talk with incredible artists, creators, and activists who are grappling with our twisted reality and doing hella cool stuff to counteract the bad. This month, I'm talking to Liz Neeley, co-founder of Unbreaking, founder of Liminal, and science communicator extraordinaire. She and the team at Unbreaking are doing the incredibly important work of tracking all the ways that the current administration is breaking our government. It's the antidote to the 24-hour doom scroll cycle and a place to learn what's actually going on. Talking to Liz was such a wonderful balm, and I know you're going to enjoy our conversation as much as I did. And then I highly recommend checking out unbreaking.org and all of Liz's work. All right, here is my chat with Liz Neeley. So you do something that I think is so crucial, especially now, but something that I think is really, really hard, which is science communication. I'd love to hear a little bit actually how you got into that and what are like the main challenges that you see right now with science communication?
Oh yeah, there's plenty too. I'm a marine biologist by training, and I was one of those people who thought that the world worked a very specific way, that experts would do research and then we'd bring that research to decision makers, and like that's how I thought the world worked. And I learned very much the hard way through some exposure to international policy, all about the trade-offs, the politicking, and the way that power works in the real world. So that's why I got interested in science communication. That's how I switched gears. And I think it also points at why this can be hard, especially right now, because we're talking about matters of life and death, whether we're talking like personal health or like global scale climate change.
Yeah.
There's real stakes. So it can be very scary to confront the knowledge of what we think is happening or think may happen. And then the other piece of that is the uncertainty, that it's like, it's not bad enough that maybe it's really bad news, but then to also hear, well, we're not sure, we can't say for certain, making decisions about what to do about this horrible thing we're documenting is a political and a community process. It's not as straightforward, the science says X, do X.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something I know was really challenging for health professionals in the pandemic was the fact of, is this airborne? Is it not airborne? And then when we had more information, people sort of turning that into a conspiracy of, well, they told us this and now it's this because, yeah, people don't like uncertainty and people really want the answer right away. When you're communicating something that is a real moving target and a developing story, how do you balance giving people information that is clear and that they can understand, and then also, being clear that this is, we're still figuring this out and we don't have all the answers.
I think that idea of we're still figuring this out, we don't have all the answers, but we're doing our best, like that has to come from somebody you trust.
Yeah.
That somebody you believe like has your best interests at heart. And especially and appreciates where you're coming from and can understand your concern, takes your concerns seriously.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think sometimes we're not the right messengers, and figuring out who do people trust? Who are they looking to? Who are they talking with that they do trust? And how do those people get information and share that information is my first, that's the first thing I think about.
Yeah.
The second thing I think about is validating the shared concerns. We may be coming at this from different places and with differing degrees of expertise or credentials or whatever it might be. But we do have the same fear, the same problem, the same challenge that we're trying to solve together. And there's a lot more too. Like we can talk about misinformation, we can talk about disinformation, and I think those are important. And I bet it's a thing that a lot of folks listening to us and thinking about this worry about. I'm just recognizing that this is a whole lot and there aren't easy answers and there's no like one simple tip.
Right.
Because it's the very nature of the things we're talking about are hard and we need to tackle it together.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the people who have all the information may not always be the best people to communicate that information. And when it comes to finding those trusted sources for people to look to that you can kind of funnel this information through, are those politicians? Are they celebrities? Are they community leaders? Is it all of that? Where do you kind of go first when trying to get information into a particular community?
It's so interesting. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian. Experts have a certain kind of information, certain ways, tools that we have, methods that we have, data that we bring to bear on a problem. Mm-hmm. Lots of other kinds of people have different kinds of information and perspectives that we need to bring together. So that is to say, like, I'm lucky because I actually know tons and tons of scientists and I get to talk to them and I know them as whole human beings. They're like, you know, in my friend group chats.
Yeah.
And like they're the people I'm having coffee and beer with and that sort of thing. I know not everybody has those connections, but no matter where you are or what topic you're interested in, there are so many people who would be thrilled to tell you about their research. And so I can point to, like, I do think there are amazing folks doing great work on TikTok and like Instagram. I can name some of the people that I really trust there, like Jessica Malati Rivera, for example, is an epidemiologist and a mom, and she really can help break down complicated stuff in a relatable and accurate way.
Yeah. Well, and that's obviously a huge part of what Unbreaking is doing. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about the Unbreaking project, how it came to be and you know, how it works?
Yeah. So Unbreaking is a project that is sort of centered on the idea that there's many, many different fronts in the fight against authoritarianism.
Yeah.
One of the ones that concerns us is flooding the zone. It's the specific strategy of like just dumping so many maneuvers, so much breaking news, so many outrageous choices and policies and statements that people feel completely flooded and overwhelmed. And then they check out, that they start to believe that we cannot track what is happening. And if we can't even track it, of course, there's nothing we can do about it. Mm-hmm. So we think that it's really important to be able to keep the count, to keep the record, to track the changes that are being made, that are hollowing out our government, that are destroying our institutions and the services that support our lives. So we are trying to build something that is the antidote to breaking news. That's why we named it Unbreaking. And what we're looking to do is, instead of flooding you with headlines and like that, like triggering our disaster responses, what we want to do is like build a durable understanding. Mm-hmm. So like zoom out a level, come up out of the chaos and the like things crashing over your head and think more systematically. The administration is using which powers of the federal government to do what kinds of things? What are the people and what are the institutions? What are the services and goods that are being destroyed, defunded, hollowed out, or hijacked?
Yeah.
So what we are building are timelines and pages that help give you a current and evolving sense of what is going on with this issue. And those issues, we've got 10 pages up right now. They range from, I come from science, so my specialty is about the medical research funding. Mm-hmm. It's about trans healthcare. It's about that side of things. But we've also got, of course, a focus on immigration and a focus on personal like data security, how our private information is being extracted and collated as part of the surveillance state.
Yeah.
So the goal of Unbreaking is to give you these pages that you can come to be like, well, I do want to know the latest, but I want it like after we've had a breath to think about what does it mean? What's the important stuff? And then you can filter those timelines. So like keeping track of, you hear about an important case. We think the courts are really key right now, but it's so hard to track progression of a lawsuit. So that's what we're offering. And even if that sounds like too much for our poor brains, once a week we send out a briefing that just focuses on one of those topics to go in depth and be like, okay, here's the situation on immigration. Here's how to think about it. Here's the key things to keep your eyes on. And most importantly, here's what people are doing to push back. The counter moves from civic society, the lawsuits, the litigation, everything that says you're not alone, it's not too late. There are things we can do to protect each other and ourselves.
That's one of the things I love most about Unbreaking is the moves and counter moves, right? And obviously we'll talk about, how can the average person help, but just seeing what actions are already being done by lawyers and institutions and activists gives me so much hope, because those sections are always really long and there is so much pushback across the board. And of course, those things don't get as much attention in the flood the zone, breaking news, everything's a disaster all the time. And I'm curious, in diving into all of this stuff constantly and having to really see the ways in which our government and society are breaking. How do you balance the sort of hope and despair and on an average day, how are you feeling about things and in that balance?
Yeah, I have to say it's one of the things that surprised me the most in doing the work of Unbreaking, that getting really close to the news, like pulling all the links, reading so much more than I would if I wasn't involved in a project like this, has actually been helpful in making it feel less awful because it creates a so I'm just talking in my own sense, right? First, it creates a container for me of like, every bad piece of news, I have something I can do with it.
Yeah.
Like I can categorize it. I can put it into our system. I can look for patterns, and then we can look for counter moves. So there's a perpetual turning to what's the big picture? How does this fit in? What are people doing about it? That helps me cope. We also bring a sort of trauma-informed approach. Unbreaking is a team of more than 100 people
That's amazing.
At this point. Not all of us are working on every issue. So It's like that, like take care of yourself by finding like what's the right place. And I think this is broadly applicable advice. We make sure that we take breaks and completely log off. We talk about how we're coping.
Yeah.
And we also remind each other about tools. Like, for example, there's good research about how doing something like playing Tetris after exposure to potentially traumatic information can help us avoid sort of secondary trauma, for example. So
That's incredible. I didn't realize that. I gotta download some Tetris.
It's a very, very cool finding, and it has to do with how our brains process information and turn memories into meaning and successfully process sort of difficult information that we've been exposed to. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I've mentioned this on podcasts I've hosted before, but and certainly a lot of my work is informed by this, but I have an anxiety disorder. I've had panic attacks my whole life. And, I've now been in therapy for about 10 years for that anxiety. And one of the things that my very first therapist told me that I found so helpful was she was like, we're trying all these different things on sort of how to manage my anxiety so that I wasn't falling into these sort of, ruminating panic attacks. And she was like, put on your calendar every day a time to just be anxious about everything. And so it's like at 3 p.m. every day for 20 minutes, I just got to be anxious about everything. I got to ruminate sort of in every bad thought and, think about the past and all of that kind of stuff. And what happened was that throughout the day, I would get anxious about something, and I would think, well, I'll save that for later. I'll save that for 3 p.m. And then by the time I got there, I had stopped being anxious about that particular thing. And so it actually did end up working. And I think that's sort of a parallel here, right? Where you have to create containers for these things, because I think that especially with social media and with the constant stream of information, I think it's really easy to think that being aware of it all the time is somehow virtuous or somehow helping.
That we're bearing witness. Yeah.
Right. And that's something I really struggle with, because I don't think that that's true. I think, it is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a relay race. You have to pick the thing that you care about, and you have to work with other people to, carry the load with you. And so, yeah, it makes complete sense to me that your team is doing that in practice, because how else do you collate all of this information that is so heartbreaking and have enough energy to continue doing it? We're only a year into this administration. We have a lot longer to go.
Yeah. I also think one of the things we all say to each other pretty regularly is no one goes alone. And that means like nobody's shouldering, a heavy project by themselves and getting lost in the weeds. But also when things are, it's not just that they feel frightening. It is that they are truly terrible.
Yeah.
And like people are dying, terrible, like bad things are happening.
Yeah.
And so to be able to talk with other people and disentangle what has actually happened, what are the plausible pathways or the mechanisms or what's the theory that we're working from about how big of a deal that is? That can be really helpful. And especially because Unbreaking is entirely reliant on trusted, reported work. So other journalists and analysts and experts out there in the world doing incredible work and then publishing it, and with the fact checking and the editorial layers on top of that. So we are doing a synthesis at that level.
Yeah.
And so it really helps me, especially when I'm not somebody who used to like journal a lot. It's not really what I do, but having to type sentences that are factually correct, that I know are building and representing other people's work, and that also will be checked by my team, by our line editors and copy editors, but also that like gut check of like, am I out of my mind for thinking this might, like this particular thing might be really bad? That's something that all of us can do with our friends, our families, our, the experts that we trust about any topic.
How do you sort of, I guess, measure the extremity of a situation? Obviously, it's going to be different for each thing, but, on Unbreaking, there's different sort of levels of endangered and critical and sort of, the urgency of a particular topic. What are the sort of measurements that you're thinking about as you're trying to determine how serious a particular executive order or act or something is? Because there is so much noise.
There's so much noise. This is not well defined, and it won't surprise any of us who are paying attention. Like tidy categories are not sufficient to cope with what we're looking at. So we're making judgment calls, and we're making them together about what is the impact of this executive order or that decision, and who in particular is going to suffer or be harmed by these decisions. That's what we're looking for, because it's very hard to compare, like you said, across issues. And it's also, we're talking about immediate, like people being kidnapped and detained and beaten and killed, right? Like that's so very different than the also incredibly important but like long-term impact of some of the other things that we're paying attention to. And I think that's what we have to do, and why we have to do it in groups, is that we cannot stop paying attention to any of those crucial things. So we have to all work together within our own like lanes and capacities, which is nice, because it also then it's that the relay race, right? You said it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's like being able to hand off to other trusted folks when you hit sort of the end of the sprint that you can do in a particular lane.
And is that how you determined exactly what topics to focus on for Unbreaking? Because obviously you cannot collate everything that's happening all the time because there's just too much. So those 10 pages that you have, was it, sort of all team determination, the expertise that you had at the beginning of the people working on the project?
Yeah, I mean, Unbreaking start as so many projects do. I don't know if your friend group does the same thing, but it's like colleagues or friends, like people who know each other or admire each other's work, are talking and they're like, oh my gosh, this is rough. You know what I wish we had? You know what I would really use if it existed? You know what I bet somebody smart is doing? And somebody should build that thing. Maybe we should build that thing.
Yeah.
So that's the history of Unbreaking. And it means that our pages reflect, it's also sort of a snapshot in time, right? Like what seemed most urgent in February and March of 2025 determined some of those initial choices.
Yeah.
So some of us were working in domains that we already knew really well and have been tracking closely. So I was bringing a lot to the table of like, I've been writing about what's happening in medical research for months now. So let's build from that. And others of us chose like, these are core rights or core attacks on civic rights or equality or vulnerable populations. And that's how we ended up with that list of pages. Now that we know how to do this work, which is like, thank you for acknowledging how hard it is, how much it takes.
Yeah.
But now that we know how to do it, we can onboard more folks, and then we can continue building new pages and standing up those timelines based on the interests and the needs that feel most urgent now.
This may be a strange question, or certainly one that wouldn't necessarily have an answer, but what do you view as the goal of Unbreaking sort of over the course of the administration, but also sort of from day to day? Is it about getting the word out that it exists so that more people can read this information? And is it about getting more people in so you can expand the topics? Is it all of these things? And yeah, in terms of thinking long term, how are you guys sort of viewing the next 3 years?
Oh,
it's a big question.
Given how much news we're processing every week.
Yeah.
Thinking on years long timelines is challenging, but I would say that when we're thinking about who we're writing for, we think about ourselves and our networks, like our friends, our families. All of them I think of as smart, busy people who really care, but like don't have the bandwidth to stay on top of the details on lots of different things.
Yes.
So that's who we're writing for. So if that sounds like you are a person that I hope would use Unbreaking, read our stuff, and maybe even join our team. I think another layer of like how we're thinking about what we're producing, who are these timelines for, is like that sense of agency, political agency, autonomy, and accountability in the future. We want to make it easier for legal teams who are building cases, who are going for groups of people who are in the hopefully near-term future are looking at this period of time and asking, what are we going to do to rebuild, to repair the damage, and to make sure this never happens again? So we think in some ways that's like an archival or a history project is what we're thinking about. It's important for us that we are able to take care of our team too, because this is an all volunteer project. A lot of our core people first met each other or last worked together on the COVID tracking project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a strong ethos of people who are willing to step in when our systems are failing us.
Yeah.
And I think what I would love is like even beyond the end of whenever we can stop making Unbreaking, is that there's a sense of a cadre of people who are willing and able to step up and know how to create teams and know how to create projects and know how to respond to whatever the next crisis might be.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that thinking about it as I definitely, had sort of wondered about the perspective that your team had on its archival and historic document purposes. And I hadn't considered the idea of, legal teams in the future, administrators, government officials being able to look at it. And, I in my spare time, I used to, when I had spare time, fix up old typewriters. And, something that you really need to do is like take a picture of each thing before you dismantle it so that you can put it back in the right place. And I really think that that's what Unbreaking is, right? As our government is taken apart, knowing how things fit together previously is so important. And that wasn't something I'd really considered. And I mean, when it comes to those countermeasures that you're tracking or that you're thinking about in the future, is there something in that you've found surprising in terms of an approach to pushback, or something that worked that you didn't expect, or, just anything in the sort of countermeasures that, gave you a sort of a different perspective on how to fix things?
That's such a great question. It's hard. It's even hard to reach back in time to myself 12 months ago.
I was going to say,
2025, Liz, what did you think? But I will say, for people like me who used to really believe in the fantasy world where like, science made decision making easy, or like things were straightforward and clean, or things were fair. It can be, there's a process of like learning about how bad things truly are. So your metaphor of that typewriter that we want to put back together is a beautiful one. And it also doesn't quite work to my mind, because I don't just want to rebuild to where things were at the end of 24.
Right.
In so many places, the status quo was already so broken.
Yeah.
And like so many people were being so badly harmed.
Yeah.
So when you recognize, like when it fully hits you, just how bad all the different bits are, and how rotten and corrupt, and, all of that emotional, when that really hits you, it can be easy to like feel like, oh, there's nothing I as a single person could possibly ever do in the face of all of that. Mm-hmm. And the reason I love the counter moves, and what I think is endlessly surprising, is people are smart. They are creative. They are so strong. They are so brave. Just regular people. Yeah. It's not special heroes.
Yeah.
And so no matter what, like maybe you don't have certain kinds of skills, or you don't have spare money that you can share with other people, or you don't, you're energy limited because you've got a chronic disease, or whatever it might be. Whoever you are, whatever skills you have, and whatever topics you're most worried about, there are ways for you to find your place and to like link in with other people who are working to make this world so much better. And that it gives me endless hope. It's how I keep doing this work.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that is most important to me that we don't lose.
And I think that paired with, the fact that we want to build something better after all of this than what we had before is a really hopeful, silver lining is going too far, right? Because in a perfect world, none of this stuff would be happening in the first place, and we'd just be able to fix what we had. But
in a perfect world, we would have completed Reconstruction.
Yeah, exactly.
The first time.
Exactly.
And that's not even it, right? Like in a perfect world, we would have never had the history of chattel slavery and colonialism and all of those things. There's so many things we could go back and undo.
Exactly. And I think that it's worth pursuing a more perfect union, right? And worth building on what we have and getting rid of what's broken and building something better. And I think that is something that has really been lost in recent decades. And I think that with the work that you're doing, the work that's, going on in Minnesota right now, in so many places, I think people are beginning to see that we all are participating in that project of creating a more perfect union. And we have to participate, and we have to really work together to make something better, because this is the country that we have and the communities that we have, and we want to live in better versions of those communities. So when it comes to an individual person and Unbreaking, what do you guys need from people? Where are the things that people could provide to you, either resources or skills or awareness? What are sort of the biggest challenges facing you guys right now?
One of the things that I get excited about that's different with Unbreaking is like, we're not trying to like get eyeballs and clicks. We're not trying to build products that are behind firewalls. And specifically, anybody who reads our stuff or looks at what we're doing and is like, oh, this is cool, I wish I could. The answer is you can. We want you to use our stuff, right? It's under a Creative Commons license. Like, take it and build more things with it. So that, I would say, is the biggest theme. And whether that you take that in a big direction, like actually making new projects, or a small direction of like, I'm going to talk to my friends about stuff that I see in the briefing or that I see on the page that I care about. That's my biggest request, is use it. Of course, sharing it is really important. And if you have time, if what you hear from me and what you see on our pages is appealing, this is an all volunteer project. All you have to do is raise your hand and be like, I only have 2 hours a week. And we're like, great, we will use it. If you have, like, again, this is one of those things where if you look at what we're doing and you have an idea, we're probably going to say either, yes, go build it and we'll celebrate you, or yeah, we hadn't even thought about that. Come do that with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there particular topics that you're looking for in terms of people's expertise, or is it just sort of whatever anybody wants to bring to the table is helpful?
That's a great question. So it does have to do with whatever we want to bring to the table. So we're open to everything, but nobody does it alone. So we're looking for small groups of folks to come in. Of course, I think like freedom of the press, free and fair elections are topic areas we're working on really hard right now, as well as some of the cross-cutting work, because in so many ways these issues none of them are standing alone. They're all kind of woven together.
Yeah. Well, and freedom of the press is something I've been thinking about in relation to Unbreaking, and the fact that you guys are building off of great work being done by institutions and journalists. And, every day we are seeing more layoffs, more shuttering of newspapers.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Is that something that you guys are worried about tracking? I guess there's not really like a solution to that, but yeah, I'm kind of curious.
Are we worried about it? Absolutely. Yeah. Our hearts go out to everybody who are losing their incomes, their jobs, their careers. We think also that it's not just the big national, like you might have heard a lot about the Washington Post just most recently, but also it's like small newsrooms, rural communities, whole areas of the country that don't have reporters holding people to account for the people in those areas. It's a huge problem. Unbreaking is specifically focused on actions of the federal government, spearheaded by the Trump administration. And all of these systemic issues, big picture, it overlaps with capitalism and racism and all of these other things. So we're not tracking that, but we are absolutely worried about it.
Yeah. Because I imagine already, obviously, there are trusted institutions out there, but even they stumble. And so already the project of just finding the right sources, the right materials, the right research, I would think is a feat unto itself. And to have those things potentially disappear or be underfunded or defunded is scary.
It is. And it's not an Unbreaking problem. I bet it's like a thing all of us are coping with all the time, right? Like, maybe you love a specific, like maybe you love ProPublica, but you're not happy with the way they are negotiating with their labor union. There's just so many challenging aspects of this for sure.
Yeah. I come from audio, and my very first internship was in public radio. And, to your point about small communities, in a lot of rural communities, public radio is the sort of news that they have. And with, that institution being defunded, it's yeah, not to get overwhelmed with bad things. But I'm just really, really grateful for everything that you guys are doing, and in awe of the work that you have done in the past year alone. It's been such an incredible resource for me, and something that I've sent to a lot of friends, and something that, I'm absolutely going to link to in the show notes. Encourage all of our listeners to go and check out and sign up for the newsletter and all of that. In terms of what's giving you hope out there, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but other organizations, other activists, art, whatever, like, what is the thing that when you log off and sort of go into your life, what is giving you life and hope?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to answer that in a sort of like eclectic way, because that's just how my brain works too. I love to keep my eyes on anybody who catches my attention because they're working in creative and unorthodox ways. And I started this by saying I come from the sciences. I focus in science. So I admire people at the Grant Witness team. They are like in the details, the nitty gritty of like how grants are being changed. Like, I don't want to track that level of stuff, but I really appreciate that they are synthesizing that. They've got, an Airtable, they've got summaries, and they've got experts who really understand that level. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love people who are bringing scientific expertise to questions that have been historically neglected. Sue Pierre is the founder of something called the Critical Ecology Lab. And Sue works on soil chemistry, like that's her technical expertise and her background, her PhD. They're an independent research institute, and they're looking at the physical legacy of colonialism on landscapes.
Oh, wow.
You can see the scars from the extractive farming and from where people were forced to be. And she just went to Greenland, so most of her work has been in the Caribbean. And so she just went to Greenland and was talking to the people there because there's a shared history of Danish colonialism in those two places, right? That's brilliant. And she's doing research outside of the traditional, like, oh, you have to be in a university kind of way. I turn, of course, to writers who are poetic, or to people who I know are on the front lines. So I think about Mariama Kaba, and I think about Kelly Hayes, authors of Let This Radicalize You. Just having that tiny little window into what it's like on the front lines for everybody who I follow, who's in Minnesota and in other communities that are experiencing ice surges. Their persistence and their ability to keep doing this work and to hold on to hope and to find the ways to work together inspires me endlessly. But then the final thing, and this is I will admit, a huge bias. My partner is a writer and a science journalist, and his last book is called An Immense World. It is all about the sensory biology of animals, which is what my own research was in.
Oh, cool.
And just the constant reminder of all the different ways that living creatures have of sensing the world around us. He's a big birder too. He's written about birding. His name is Ed. Cool. That connection to the world is not only what I'm experiencing on my computer screen. The world is also the birds in our backyard and our dogs sniffing and experiencing our daily walk in a completely different way than I do. That helps me keep doing everything and being alive and being grateful for being alive.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's beautiful. And I'm absolutely going to grab that book. It sounds fantastic. And actually, one final sort of fun question for you, because I was obsessed with marine biology as a kid. Yay. I definitely, wanted to be a marine biologist when I was 8. What is your favorite marine animal and why?
Oh, that's impossible.
A favorite, perhaps.
Yeah, I was I'll give you 20 favorites right off the top of my head. I really like sea urchins. I really like the weird little suction feet that they have. And they're dear to my heart because when I was a kid, I lived in Iceland, and a diver came to my class and showed us a sea urchin skeleton that he had, like those very cool shells. And I couldn't believe it was an animal, and I couldn't believe any animals lived in the water in Iceland. And so like that's like a special creature to me.
Yeah.
But my other favorite at the moment, I have to say, mola mola, the giant ocean sunfish.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
They
I love sunfish.
Ridiculous pouty little mouths. And the size, like just thinking about over the course of their lives, growing from tiny, tiny little larvae, like the size of like the period at the end of a sentence, to these massive creatures. That is extraordinary. And yeah.
How big do they get?
Very big. They can be like 500 pounds. And they also,
oh my God,
they're so silly. They don't have a tail the way that you would expect a fish to normally have a tail. They have, here's a fun term, caudal peduncle. Like this,
caudal peduncle?
Like a goofy little blocky back end. You'll go look them up. Mola mola. You'll see what I'm talking about. Mola.
I absolutely will. I remember seeing my first sunfish in the Monterey Bay Aquarium when I was, 8 or 9. And I was just, it wasn't as big as that, but I thought it was very, very cool. They're such there's a lot of funny looking creatures in the ocean, which is awesome.
They do. And they're funny looking for amazing reasons. Like,
yes, yeah.
We could a whole nother hours and hours of conversation about that.
Absolutely. Well, if people want to follow your work, obviously unbreaking.org, but where else can people find you and everything that you're up to?
So that is the best way. We're also hosted on Button Down. Shout out to Button Down for the newsletter there, Unbreaking there. But for me personally, if you are like, ooh, Liz, I would like to hear more about like what's happening on the science side of things, I write a weekly newsletter called Meeting the Moment. That's also on Button Down. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Liz Neeley.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Liz, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. This was so hope-inducing, and I'm really grateful for all the work that you and Unbreaking are doing.
I thank you for letting me talk about this. You can hear how important it is to me, how much I love it, how proud I am of the team of people doing this, and how much we believe in all of us.
I believe in you guys, too. It's really inspiring. Hello, my little havoc wreakers. Thank you so much for listening to the first season of 2008, and get prepared for an absolutely smashing season 2, hopefully coming sometime in late 2026 or early 2027. In the meantime, show your allegiance to yours truly by going to atypicalartist.co/merch and get a Havoc Wreaker button or a Wreak Some Havoc sticker. They are absolutely fabulous. Remember to always go out there and wreak some havoc. All right, back to the show.